There we go. Should be good. Can y'all hear me? Okay. I can't hear y'all, I guess, because it doesn't let me multitask. So I'm just going to go ahead and start it if that's good with y'all. All right. There we go. Should be good to go now.
Alrighty.
How we doing?
Howdy. What a great was it Monday? Monday? My work schedule's messed up my whole cycle of what day of the week it is.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yes,
I
sir.
frequently have to ask people like, "Whoa, wait, what day is it?" Oh, okay, got it.
Yesterday was my Monday, even though it was Sunday. It just throws everything off.
I think today is my Saturday, maybe. Well, we have a very esteemed guest that we've been hoping to get on, and we finally got it, worked it out, and I'm excited. Dr. Kloesel, why don't you, I guess, go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of tell us what you do.
Sure. I'm Kevin Kloesel. I am the university meteorologist at the University of Oklahoma, working in the Department of Campus Safety. Also direct the Oklahoma Climatological Survey, which is a state agency in Oklahoma that is responsible for running the Oklahoma Mesonet. and I do forecasting for approximately 400 events a year, for which I have written the weather plans for pretty much almost all of them. So it's a full-time 365, 24/7 kind of operation. A university campus like ours is a 24/7 outdoor event. There's always something going on, or somebody outside, or people coming back from the library, or intramurals, or massive events like OU football. It's pretty much all shapes and sizes, so that keeps me pretty busy.
Yeah, needless to say, like that's a lot to juggle. But we're glad to have you on despite the busyness of your schedule. But we I guess maybe kind of as a background to how Will and I know you, we took your class, and still, my
I am
favorite
so
class.
sorry.
No, really. Like,
Tell
I
everybody that.
I'm not even just saying this. Like, it was my favorite class out of anything I took at
It
OU.
was fantastic.
It was. I love that class so much. But it generally focused on emergency management and kind of how you kind of have to incorporate weather into not just the like prediction aspect of it, like trying to forecast into the future, but also like the now aspects. What's going on at this moment, and how do we kind of deal with that? So what is that kind of like on, like you said, a huge campus with a million things going on at any given time?
Sure. And I appreciate the kind words about the class. The students make that class, because the students kind of drive the content, and I'll use that class sort of as a segue to answer the question you just posed, and that is, you know, we always want to bring in somebody who is not a meteorologist. And that person, though, is usually cast into the role of making weather decisions, whether that's a university president, or a school superintendent, or the operator of a large venue like the Daytona International Speedway or something like that. And so, really, when we think about meteorologists and our own training, we're very much focused on, okay, look at the big picture first, right? Look at that massive synoptic or hemispheric continental US map. And then within that, you kind of drill down, and we're always thinking big picture and drilling down to the here and now. An emergency manager flips that forecast funnel, right? We call that the forecast funnel, but that flip means that the emergency manager is only focused on their jurisdiction. That's it, right? And at the University of Oklahoma, that's a postage stamp that's 4 miles by 2 miles, and then we've got some other properties that are here and there. But it's the here and now. What's going on now, and then what's going on 15 minutes from now, an hour from now. So you work that process almost backwards from the way the meteorologist works it. So I can't really say, oh, there's a trough coming in 3 days, and it's going to have vorticity and this, that, and the other. They're thinking, why are you worried about 3 days? I'm worried about an hour from now, 2 hours from now, and what's going to happen right here. If it's a storm that's passing by 20 miles to our south or north, they don't care. It's, from a meteorology perspective, we're always looking at all of these other things, right? Where are the best storms? If you guys ever went out and chased, that, right? You know that it's that kind of a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
With a university, here and now, right? What do I do now, and how do I prepare for what is going to happen next? So that preparedness component becomes an inside out almost from our meteorological training. And I had to. One of the things that I did that I felt like was the best thing professionally that I had done is I put down the meteorology glasses, and I went through and got my emergency management certification. So going through the emergency management classes, working with folks who are focused primarily on preparedness and mitigation and response and recovery, those kinds of things. I had to kind of check my weather training at the door and learn how to do it the way they did it, because ultimately there's no way I'm going to be able to convey weather information to them if it's not on their terms. And so I think that's the one thing that sometimes we meteorologists miss. We like to use our jargon, we like to use our fancy terms and those kinds of things, But when you're dealing with an emergency management population and or any lay user of weather information that has to make a decision, that might be an insurance company, again, school superintendent, university president, athletic director, football coach, athletic trainer, you name it. Those are not folks that are into the meteorological jargon, and honestly they don't give a crap about 30% either, right? You know, if I want to give them a 30 or a 40% chance of storms today, they're like, no, Kevin, are we going to have storms here or not, period, right? And that's all they're interested in, because ultimately their scheduling or modification to say work rest if it's heat, that's what they're interested in. They're not interested in me telling them that there's a possibility, you know, a 20% chance that something's going to happen.
And I guess the way you describe it, it sounds, and I know just because I took the class, I don't want to give too much away ahead of time, but I know there's kind of like an almost psychological aspect to it, because you have to kind of factor into account like how people are going to react to certain things. Like it's not just like, okay, well, here's the forecast, that's it. It's how do I present the information in a way that people are going to A, listen to, and B, understand. And you kind of alluded to that a bit.
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to drop the mindset of right and wrong, right? We are not wrong when we forecast, but we are not right when we forecast. We're trying to use our expertise to provide the best estimate of what we think is going to happen next, and then how that might impact whatever is going on, right? Is it, you know, a place where you have, you know, folks that are outside, but shelter is right next door, so it only takes them 42 seconds to move? Or is it like our summer camps on this campus where we've got 600 kids all under the age of 18 that are 3 blocks, you know, out in the intramural fields away from a structure that's large enough to house all of them and get them to safety? And if you haven't walked that, and you haven't walked it like a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old walks it, one of the things I did early on is I had ankle surgery, and so I was in a boot. And I decided to walk all of our evacuation routes in a boot, just to see how that changed the timing, so that if you knew you had ADA compliance issues or whatever the case may be, you had folks maybe in wheelchairs or elderly, like with our softball complex, right? We have so many elderly fans that come to softball games. That's a long walk to the law school, right? Which is out past left field and where the shelter is. And then we realized, you know what, we need golf carts, and we need this many golf carts to be able to transport people to shelter for those that couldn't walk that entire distance. Well, that means you've got to change when you make the evacuation call. May not be the same every single time. If you've got a youth league soccer tournament going on and everybody's spry, and the moms and dads are young and the kids are all 5 and 6 years old, etc., that's a whole different set of circumstances. And therefore, our weather plans can't be one size fits all, right? You cannot just have a weather plan for your intramural field and hope it applies to all events. You can't have a weather plan for our Gaylord Family Memorial Football Stadium and hope it works for graduation in the same way that it might work for football, that it might work for a concert. Those are all very different things. And so I think one of the things that we've had to learn, at least I had to learn, was that I can't do the meteorology the same time. It has to be customized to the user, and the decisions and the decision timing and all of those things are customized to the user. And that was, you know, one of the things that I tried to get across in the class, right? By bringing in, you know, all of these different people that have different needs, and sometimes they're conflicting needs. I mean, sometimes I don't know how the Weather Service does it, right? They've got this massive county warning area and thousands of different needs from the users that live in that county warning area. Broadcasters, same thing. The DMAs are huge, and you have every imaginable age group, every imaginable, you know, set of diversity from a standpoint of the population. And yet you're really only afforded the opportunity to say one thing, right? To say one message. You can't take the time to tell everybody something different. Early in my event workshop days, I learned we had Walmart show up. Walmart wanted to do a better job with, and they do a phenomenal job now. Everything from weather support for safety to just-in-time delivery and such. But I found out from the Walmart individual when they first came to our workshop, they had a tornado warning in Houston, Texas. Their plan at the time was to call every Walmart property in the warning one by one in sequence to let them know they needed to take action.
Wow.
There are hundreds of Walmarts in Houston. Right?
Yeah.
They didn't get through the whole list, and the warning had expired, which meant a third of their list didn't get notified. They don't do it that way anymore, right? They've got a much more robust way of communicating instantaneously. Of course, my suggestion was the stupid one. It's like, don't you have weather radios in the store? It's like, you sell them, right? Just out of the box and turn it on, right? That's all you have to do. And it was like, oh yeah, I guess so. But it's every entity is different, right? A DHL, a FedEx, a UPS, trucking companies, concert venues, like Red Rocks, it's the recent in the news, right? It's everyone has a different set of challenges. And this is why I won't let people copy our plans. I mean, I get requests every day. A day doesn't go by that I don't get an email. Hey, we hear you guys have a great job with this, that, and the other. And can we have your plan for football? Can we have your plan for baseball? Can we have your plan for softball, soccer, track, whatever it is? No. It's a short answer. No, you may not. I will be happy to help you with your plan, but I am not copying and pasting ours because it will not apply to that other unique set of circumstances, even if it's a university. They're going to be different. And so that's
oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I would say that's the challenge, right? People want the easy solution. They just want to have somebody write a plan for them or copy and paste somebody else's, and that does not work.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is there's so many factors that like you mentioned, distance from your place of shelter to the whatever in question. There's so many different factors that I don't see how anyone could I could understand maybe taking a template and kind of tweaking it, but there's like you said, it's just so insane.
Even at OU now, especially with all the changes on campus, for those who don't know, they're building a new softball stadium. One of the old dorms just got demolished, and they're going to be building new ones. I'm sure that's changed the plans for certain things drastically in some ways.
Absolutely. But again, one of the things, we're in a great position. I am so fortunate. I am so lucky. The leadership at the University of Oklahoma at all levels, whether that's President Harris, the athletic department with athletic director Castiglione, all the way down to the individual game managers, operations people. There are the best in the business at the University of Oklahoma across all of these categories. Jackie Livingston at softball, Ryan Gaines baseball, Bryant Houck, Natalie Davis, all those folks that run, operations, they get it, right? They not only get it, they support it. And when they support it, it means we can be proactive. So, for example, when they put design plans for a new softball stadium, we can say, you know what, this is where we want the weather support piece to go. And they're like, yeah, exactly. That's where it'll go. And so now we're building our facilities with weather safety already embedded. And man, that makes it so much easier on everybody, right? On the operations people to evacuate folks, on the meteorologist who has to make that call. That just makes it so much easier. And like I said, I am so blessed because the environment at OU is more supportive here with respect to weather than any other campus on the planet, without a doubt. I would put our support, our buy-in, our high level buy-in all the way to the regents. In fact, one of the regents meetings, the first thing they said is, we want to see the weather operations at the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center. And I'm like, sure. Well, we only have 15 minutes. 45 minutes later, they were still asking questions and going, oh my God, we did not know, that you guys were doing this. And thank you. And it's like, no, it's the other way around. Thank you, right?
Mm.
It's thank the regents for supporting the financial investment into the infrastructure to have a hot EOC and those kinds of things. We will put our safety plans across the board up against anybody else's, and the only way that happens is not necessarily because of us that are in the trenches day in day out. It's leadership that supports it and has the buy-in, and you can't do without that. It has to happen.
Yeah, and I wonder if has things even trended more in that direction since, say, February when the storm that came through Norman just narrowly missed campus. We had Colton Williams from OU Nightly on talking about his side of things. Has that impacted how things go from upper level recently?
Proximity and experience are the best teachers, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. And we see this time and time again. If you look across central Oklahoma, check out which homes have tornado shelters and which ones don't. The ones that have tornado shelters are by and large the people who have been directly impacted by a tornado. Those who have never been impacted don't have one. That's just the way it is, right? We act based upon our personal experiences. And if you've never endured something like that, you don't quite have the same respect for it as those who have been through it. And unfortunately, there's a little bit of a PTSD factor there as well, right? But I can't even explain, right? The fact that schools getting hit by tornadoes in central Oklahoma led directly to us getting $19 million in tornado shelters that allow every resident of our campus to have a safe place to be, right? That happened because of a proximity. So yes, it's a teacher, and people get it. So
I guess kind of on the subject of having a lot of support, from kind of the higher ups in the institution. One of the things I always love to tell people that I learned from your class, and I'm wondering if it'll apply anymore since we're switching conferences, is the thing about us having a real grass field instead of turf. Is that going to be the case now that we're switching over?
So we do have real grass in Norman.
Oh yeah, I meant being the only ones in the conference with real grass instead of turf.
No, because there's a university approximately 380 miles due south of here that is also putting in grass. And those two newest members of the SEC, I think, will continue to drive the safety agenda of the Southeastern Conference in the same way that we drove the safety agenda in the Big 12. In fact, we've already had, they've already had game manager meetings. We've already had discussions about lightning protocols and, what's the state of the art versus what people have been doing for 30 years. Those discussions have been taking place even before we, accept full-blown membership into the SEC, which comes a year from now.
That's cool. I always love that little tidbit because, the thing with one of the big takeaways I got from your class was how just completely underestimated, heat safety is. And that, I'm here in Lubbock and we're getting, triple digits. It's supposed to be like 109 tomorrow.
Right.
So, and
well, that mindset is changing rapidly. We've sort of had this major influx of everybody wanting field turf synthetic surfaces. But through skin burns and heat illness and things like that, we're starting to see people switch back to grass.
That's good. That's good. Well, we did want to talk to you about, you'd already brought it up, the Red Rocks incident. And I remember as it was going down, seeing some of the reactions on Twitter, and all I could think about was how similar it was to some of the cases we discussed in your class. Do you want to kind of elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'll tell you one, and I'll start this by saying this is not easy, right? It is easy to armchair this after the fact and point out everything everyone did wrong. I mean, but honestly, if you're on the event side, you have to expect that, right? If you get yourself into a situation like this, you're going to take heat. If I bust a forecast, I'm going to take heat. I have to recognize that. If I make a wrong decision, I'm going to take heat. I got to own up to it, right? And so what frustrates me is, when you have the opportunity to own up to it, just be honest. Just say, look, we thought this was going to happen and it didn't. And this was on, the decision on which, or the information on which we were basing the decision. One, you can't pass the buck, right? And two, you can't say things like, oh, Mother Nature, we got to have a talk with Mother Nature, and some of the things that we saw come out from the venue after the fact. I'm sorry. That's the part that frustrates me. It's not the bust. That's not the issue here. The issue is owning up to the bust and owning up to the fact that, look, we put people in harm's way. We got to figure out how not to do that again, right? We have to use this as a learning experience and not start, oh, well, Mother Nature said this, and, well, we have our meteorological services and they told us everything was fine. And, oh, it was a once in a lifetime event. You just said, this looks exactly like all those cases we talked about in class. If that's true, and I would agree with you, it is true, then this is not a once in a lifetime event. We don't have disaster after disaster from a weather perspective at venues if it's a once in a lifetime event. Okay, well, let's look at the weather. A hailstone on the Front Range in Colorado in June. That doesn't sound to me like a once in a lifetime event. It might be a once a day event given certain synoptic patterns and easterly flow at the surface, and you get storms that pop there. You can get those kinds of hailstones in that area every stinking day as long as the pattern stays the same. So I think where I get frustrated is this attempt to pass it off as either humor or it was, and we talk about this in class, the freak accident, the freak lightning storm. Well, if that freak event hadn't happened, everything would have been fine. Those kinds of quotes make me angry, right? Those are the things that really upset me. We have to know that we're dealing with an uncertain science. We're making calls based upon the best information we can possibly have, provided you're getting the best information, right? This is the other issue, is what information are you getting, right? What are you availing yourself to, and how much of it is professional expertise and how much of it is you on one of these, right? Which cannot possibly give you the comprehensive amount of data necessary to query the atmosphere in 3 dimensions in real time in an event like this, right? If you're using one of these, you're hosed, you're toast. And so that's the other piece, right? Did you avail yourself to the best possible information? Did you get it in a timely way? Were your plans robust enough to be able to communicate that to make evacuation decisions in time? And at some point on that spectrum, there's a gap or a failure. And that is when you say, here's our plans, here's what we were intending to do, and it went totally wrong. Own up to it and say, this is how we're going to fix it because we value our customers. We want our customers to be safe. We love our customers. We want them to come back, and we will. Give us a chance. We'll be better. We will be better. That's where I get frustrated, right? Is they didn't do that, and they still haven't done it.
Yeah.
And so I'm leery about going to Red Rocks at this point. It's like, you haven't really, if you're talking with Mother Nature and that's your solution, or if you're going to pass this off as a once in a lifetime event, you haven't shown me that you're ready to take the steps necessary to protect the next group of people that show up for a concert. That's where I get frustrated. And that's part of the training, right? Part of the training is we're arming you with information that is inherently uncertain. You know that, right? I mean, we can't be spot on every stinking time. It's just not going to happen. But we have to recognize that, and we got to own up when it doesn't go well.
Yeah, it's like you said in class, there's only 2 outcomes. It's either, well, nothing happened, or, well, if it hadn't have happened.
Right. And again, this is part of comprehensive weather planning, right? Is to have your plans in place as to what happens when things go wrong. Your plans don't stop when you evacuate people, right?
Yeah.
Once you evacuate people, first you got to get them back in, right? So your plan has to take those. And if you mess it up, your plan better address how you are going to fix it going forward. And the top of that list is, how do you communicate this to your fans? You know, how am I going to communicate this to the OU fan base that they got pelted by baseball hail in the stadium because we decided, well, it's all clear?
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine? I mean,
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I mean, you
that doesn't
compare.
fly.
You,
I can't say, oh man, we had a hailstorm in Norman. That's a freak event. Never happen, never again. I'm going to talk with Mother Nature tonight and let Mother Nature know you can't do that to us again. It's stupid. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, you compare what happened there to, say, how the Women's College World Series handled the storms that were constantly popping up around the stadium. And it seems like, at least from the outside, from what I saw, they handled it in a much better perspective than Red Rocks did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will take that compliment personally, because I was on call for the 9 days of the Women's College World Series. That was I mean, again, OU is the university host of that event. And so we have OU personnel, we have OU softball game management, we have OU weather, we have all of that in OKC ready to roll. We run the College World Series as if we were running it at Marita Hines on our campus. And so I appreciate the kind words. I don't know that you probably didn't know that I was the weather on call for that event, but
yeah, I wasn't
now
sure
that
if it
you've
was
said that, I'm glad
if it was an
it looks
overarching
like we knew what we were doing.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was an overarching NCAA thing, but it's interesting to know that OU is technically the host for that.
Correct.
That's cool.
So we are the ones advising NCAA on all of those decisions and such. And we took some heat on Twitter, and we're going to. We've got some things up there that we need to help USA softball fix. Some of them are the exact same problems that the Red Rocks had. You know, all Red Rocks is interested in, and this also goes for USA softball, get the people out of our facility and get them somewhere else. Because if something happens to them somewhere else, it's not. And the Hall of Fame Stadium up there kind of has the same mindset, right? It's not our stadium, right? It's their stadium, it's their rules. But we can help inform that and help, maybe modify that and try and get safety. The big issue nowadays with concerts, with outdoor venues, the Women's College World Series, Red Rocks, both, rideshare, right? If you have a plan that sends people to their cars and that's your solution, what about people who ride share to the event?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a car. What are you going to do for them?
And cars aren't exactly, top of the line shelter in any weather instance, but like, golf ball size hail. I still don't want to be in my car.
Yeah. And so what that means is the car in this instance is the least of bad options, or the best of bad options, let's say, right? Not least, but best. You have to look at the options you have, and you have to say, okay, what is the safest of what I have in my shelter inventory? And yes, it's a hailstorm, and unfortunately the car is probably still your best option, even though it's not a good choice. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing we have to work on at Women's College World Series with USA softball is, do we have enough spaces, or can we create the spaces that we need? In the same way that the Daytona International Raceway did, right? They did a complete retrofit to make sure that they could house everybody and put everybody in safety if they had lightning storms and things like that. We have to look at that. We do for our own, football stadium. My gosh, right? That construction, thank you, Jesus, right? We have so much more space to put people now and sort of scatter them throughout in safe harbor at our football stadium. We're looking at that with the new softball stadium, but we got to do something else up on the hilltop there to make sure that we've got enough space for everybody, so that we're not just turning, wayward rideshare people into the parking lot with no shelter, right? I mean, if you're a female that road share, are you going to hop in the car with a stranger? That's just stupid. You don't want to do that either. So, and that's kind of the position that you almost put people in. You know, what about Red Rocks, right? This concert, you know, Lewis Tomlinson, think about the audience. You know, the weather plan has to account for the audience. Okay, well, what's the demographic of Lewis? Lewis's demographic is primarily female. And there were a large number of females at that concert. All you have to do is look at the pictures, right? Look, just counting people. You're probably talking about 70, 30, 80, 20 female at Lewis. And so you're going to turn all of those girls that maybe then, you know, talk to them after the fact. How many of you road share, you know? Well, those three came together because they didn't want to go alone, which is the right thing to do. That's the safe thing to do. But now you have all of these people who ride share because they don't want to be out there in traffic. They don't want to be out there in a car. They don't want to use the gas to drive out there. It's just easier to ride share there and back. Mm-hmm. And you do it in groups. Okay, well, now you have groups of ride shares who have no car to go to when you tell them to go to their car. So what are their options?
Yeah.
Well, if the hail starts falling, their option is to hope somebody lets them into their vehicle or some shelter space, whether it's a concession stand or a bathroom or whatever the case may be. Man, that's a tough spot to be in if you're a 28-year-old male with your friends out to see Lewis Tomlinson, and now you're getting beat on the head with, you know, golf ball size hail.
Yeah.
So those are the things that plans need to have in them. You're planning for what to do with the people who come to your event. And like I mentioned before, with our wheelchair and our elderly at softball, we had specific plans in place for them. Not just a generic, hey, everybody leave, right? It's, if you're able to go to your cars, do so. If you want to go to this shelter, we will take you. If you are unable to go on your feet, we have golf carts available to drive you there. And we've got drivers at the ready. We did a graduation evacuation that way. We evacuated an entire platform party on golf carts because we had stowed them behind the stage proactively, thinking that we might have storms later that night. And if we got ourselves into that situation, we'd need to evacuate them quickly. The best way to evacuate somebody off the 50-yard line of a stage on a football field is with a golf cart. And we had built the armor decking in such a way that the golf carts could travel on armor decking, which is much faster than them traveling just on grass or across, if it starts raining, a wet football field. So those are the details that have to be in plans that you have to think about, literally walking every step of the way on their behalf and then doing so as if it was your child. Mm-hmm. You know, if the Red Rocks planners and decision makers had internalized that all of that female demographic that was at the concert were their daughters, what would they have done? And would it have been different? And if it would have been, then you got to change your plans. Mm-hmm. If you were happy with throwing your kid into the middle of that and saying, hey, go ahead, you know, it's all yours. I don't know of any parents that would agree with that. And that's the way you have to plan. You have to plan as if these, again, you know, all of you guys on campus, we even, God, I shouldn't say this. I'm going to throw myself under the bus. You know, we call in the EOC, we call all of you our kids. What would we do if you were our kids? Would we be doing the same thing? Or would we be potentially pulling the trigger on this a little bit earlier, knowing that you guys are going to want to, we see it, right? We have the South Oval cam. Mm-hmm. When we send out an alert, we watch everybody on the South Oval, and instantaneously everybody picks up their phone, looks at it, then they do one of these. You know, they're looking around. And if they don't really see the threat, then they walk just the same pace to get to wherever they're going. And we know that. Mm-hmm. So what do we have to do? We got to pull the trigger a little bit earlier, knowing that in either case, you're still not going to see it. So that doesn't change because we're trying to be proactive. But we've given you just a few more minutes to get to your destination by doing it that way. And so that, again, those are the things that have to be in a plan.
Yeah, I think one of the things that all these incidents seem to have in common, and something I know you have some strong feelings about. I want to ask you about here in a bit. The audience, or like the, I guess audience is the right word. The audience reaction, um, and kind of how you factor that into account, and how sometimes the message has to kind of be, we need to be better audience members, because I know
Yeah.
OU kids are a little passionate about football, just a tiny bit, and
So
sometimes
you're referring to the in stadium evacuation message
yes,
response, which was hell no, we won't go, hell no, we won't go from the
yes.
student section. Yes.
So how
Um,
do you kind of communicate, like, because on one hand it is definitely a large part of the responsibility is the event organizer, but on the other hand, there's some level of responsibility to yourself to listen to what people are telling you.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case, right? You cannot legislate compliance here. There's no way that we can send in OUPD and handcuff every student and drag them out for their own good,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, because you create additional risk by doing that, and we never want to create additional risk. What we hope is that enough people in the group will take action that we minimize risk as much as we can. But ultimately, if we've done everything that was, if we have a plan, we follow the plan was vetted, the plan was communicated, and we have, these visual cues of risk now in this particular instance. If people decide they're going to be the hardy soul and take their shirt off and their gloves off and their hat off when it's 20 below zero at a football game, I can't walk over there and wrap that person in a blanket because I'm worried about them, right? It just can't, it doesn't happen that way. So yes, we do what we can within the, sort of the realm of trying to save people from themselves, but ultimately the ability to save people from themselves lies on the individual
Mm-hmm.
and not the organizer.
Yeah.
And we saw this with Red Rocks as well, right? Numerous people tweeting, "You will have to pry my dead body off my chair." That person almost got their wish, right? The right hailstone in the right location, right about the right temple, and that person might have gotten their wish because it was a life-threatening situation by the time that the hail started pelting in there. And so, they were being funny, right? They were just being themselves with an attitude. But at the same time, the threat is real. And the more we can convey the real threat, and I think we did this in class, right, is, socialize photos of students who have been in these situations before. I know a lot of folks who saw those pictures of the beat up and bruised females that were, on their back, on their neck, on their legs, on their arms, all of those. That had an impact somewhere. It had an impact on someone, probably in their peer group, that, wow, I do not want to be outside in a hailstorm and maybe I should take that seriously. The more people can share the bad things that happen to them, the better, right? The more you can see what that looks like and internalize what that looks like, I think the better. And so we have to be very real about how we train and how we communicate risk. And when we deal with student organizations and fraternities and sororities and, all the groups that go to games, we try to socialize what that would look like if this happened to you. And do
Mm-hmm.
you want that? Right? This is what you live with, this is what you're dealing with, etc. So those are the things that we try to do. We try to do as much of it as we can. But again, you're never going to save everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think kind of to your point about being real and just kind of being real. One of the things that always stood out to me was the lightning thing, um, the graphic image of like what actually happens when you're struck by lightning, and how people, if
Right.
if there's blue sky, people don't worry about it, and that's kind of a problem about like reaction time. But I'm sure you get some or I know you get some blowback when you take like that extra precaution and then something doesn't happen. What's that like in
Right.
terms of how you get to do your job going forward?
I am never bothered by that because if we're thinking about a college campus, I would much rather hear from an irate student or parent than have to talk to that parent about why their student is no longer here. Right? I mean, sometimes those are your options, right? If you see a life-threatening risk and you act on it, and then it doesn't happen, okay, the tornado misses. People are mad. Well, you should have known that tornado was going to miss campus. Why did you send us all to shelter? I get it, right? But at least I'm having a conversation with that person, because if they'd been outside and the tornado had been shifted 2.5 miles north, they might not have been, right? I mean, they might not be here today if that were the case. So that doesn't ever bother me. The fact that they are mad about something means that they are alive, right? They have survived. Now, do we get a cry wolf syndrome down the road? There's a lot of research out there that suggests no. That even if people take shelter in a tornado and don't get hit, the next time there's a tornado warning, they'll still take shelter. They may look outside first, but they'll still take shelter. And I think that the fact that these extreme weather conditions are understood by a large number, particularly of people in central Oklahoma, helps, because they're bombarded with it on a regular basis. We're not going to be in that position to say, oh, this is a once in a lifetime thing and we didn't know what to do. So that's just a cop out.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the opposite when it comes to like closing school for snow, right? Like it's the opposite. Like, oh, I think we should have closed it even more.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think if you gave students a choice, they would find every excuse to close school. And this is the fun thing we talk about in class, right? Your risk of a car accident is higher when it's raining than when it's snowing, because when it's snowing, a lot of people self-regulate. When it's raining, most people do not, right? They just travel right along at the same speed and get to point A to point B. We don't see people slowing down or anything. I mean, the data support that. It's crazy how many more accidents we have in rain than we have in snow. You would think that snow was the most dangerous weather hazard ever in the history of weather, right? Because we get blasted if we so much as think about going to class, on that day.
On day with a little bit of snow.
You bring it, but you're right? The number of times that I get called out either on Twitter or my phone number's out there, man, I get text messages and I have no idea who they're from. I can look them up, I can always look them up and see who it's from. And we always know who's responding to the university text messages that go out. That's always great fun. We sit back in the EOC and watch those roll in, and it's hysterical. But again, we are trying to make the best decision on our assessment of safety. And for the collective whole, again, I mentioned the Weather Service and broadcasters earlier. That's hard because, we went to class on a -5 wind chill day. And I got sued. A faculty member on our campus who was elderly, was older, said that set of conditions was dangerous. And by me saying we are in class that day, he felt like it was my fault. And so he sued me, right? I was sued by a faculty member for being at work on a day when the morning was a -5 wind chill. And I get it. There are people on our campus that are sensitive to weather differently than others. But unfortunately, the decision has to be made for the entirety of campus, right? And if we assess that campus roads are safe, the parking lots are safe, and if you wear the right clothing, -5 is not going to be a problem for you unless you decide to be naked outside for 30 minutes. Which we don't typically see on college campuses, maybe middle of the night around homecoming, or after after a win over Texas or something like that, right? We do have those instances, but I think that those situations, again, incumbent upon the individual, right? If you feel like it's still not safe, then by all means talk to your supervisor. and say, can I come in at 10 a.m.? Can I come in at noon? Can I stay home, work from home today? Whatever that is, just talk with your supervisor. Don't immediately, take that information and say, well, Kevin's making me go to work today and I'm going to die because of it, right? If you feel that strongly about it, talk to your supervisor. And if you think the weather is going to impact you, so be it.
Yeah, most people are generally like decent enough. They're not going to, like, if your boss isn't going to make you.
Right.
Most people are good about that.
And again, it was a lawsuit that didn't go anywhere, and it wasn't going to, because we made the decision based upon the information, and the information is pretty overwhelmingly that this was not dangerous conditions unless you yourself did something, to modify the conditions, i.e. you're not clothed or whatever. But it's interesting to see how these decisions impact individuals, right? And whether it's somebody that's mad because we're going to school, whether it's mad because we've told people they were as lightning and they don't want to go to class. It's the individual responses are daily, they're frequent, they're and sometimes they're hilarious. So
have you figured out the lightning one yet?
Yes, but it's kind of interesting. I was not that popular like in high school and college, with the other, with the female persuasion. I never got so many marriage proposals in all my life. When I canceled school for snow. I mean, we got, oh, I want to marry you. I want to have your children. Oh my God. It's like, I didn't realize I could be so popular.
The perks of emergency management, I guess.
I guess.
Well, hey, we're coming up on about 15 minutes till 1. I know you said you had to leave at 1, so yep. I want to get one more question in there, and then anything else you want to add. What's the hardest call you've had to make, and how did that kind of play out, and did it end up being kind of a good call, or did it end up being something to learn from?
I've been very lucky. Probably two of the most difficult things that I've ever done. One was the OU Kansas game, which was slated for an 11 o'clock kick in Norman. And now the year escapes me. I forget if it was 14, I think, 2014. And it was to be televised on Fox. And we were going to have lightning in that window. There was no doubt. I felt like there was no doubt, right? Weather's uncertain, so there's always a doubt. But I was really confident that we were going to have lightning storms. And so we, at 4 o'clock in the morning, that morning, were rousting everybody out of bed, including a Fox producer at 2 a.m. because he was on the West Coast, and talking about whether we could move the kickoff to the afternoon to completely avoid the lightning window. In other words, if we kick at 11 in the middle of the game, somehow we're going to have a delay. We don't know how long it's going to last. It could be multi-hour. Then we'll have to come back and resume, and who knows when, right? Or we can let the expected lightning window pass, begin the 90-minute clock, the prep clock for a game, right? Because everybody thinks a game starts at kickoff. It does not. It starts 90 minutes prior to the game when teams arrive and fans start arriving, and you can't just flip a switch at kickoff time. And then you have, an unimpeded, uninterrupted game window. The only issue with that with Fox was that they were televising Cal Stanford, which is the big game out on the West Coast, big rivalry game. And, that game has had some historic moments, with the band on the field and that kind of stuff. So that's a watch, right? A lot of people watch that game. They were slated to kick at 2:30 our time, which was 12:30, and they were on the same network back to back. And so by moving our game, we were going to have to find a different location for the game within the Fox family of stations to put it on. So this was not trivial, but ultimately, again, leadership, right? Our leadership bought into the fact that, okay, we trust the decision, we trust the information, and we would like to play the game unimpeded for fans. Now it still rained, but the lightning was long gone. And I don't know how many people remember which rushing record was broken.
I was going to mention it. Samaje Perine broke the single game rushing record.
So we ended up with the game ball that day because we made the case very quickly that, if we'd have had a lightning delay at halftime, given the score, you don't put Samaje back in. You just don't. He got on a roll, and that roll led to, okay, well, let's leave him out there. Oh my gosh, he just scored from 40, from 42. Let's leave him out there. Oh my gosh, he's within 30 of the record. Let's leave him out there. That would have never happened if we'd have had a lightning delay in the middle of the game. I can guarantee you that, right? He wouldn't have come back due to injury risk and things like that. You can't put your star running back off the shelf for an hour and a half, and then you're up by 30 in the third quarter. You don't put him back in. You play your backups. He doesn't play the second half. He doesn't break the rushing record. So it was hard, but the way it worked out meant that when we got to 2016 and it was Ohio State OU in Norman with a 6:30 kick at 2:00 in the afternoon, one of us had to talk to Urban Meyer and Bob Stoops about the possibility of pushing that kickoff back to 8:00 to avoid what was anticipated to be severe storms. That was a struggle too, because most of the other forecast outlets around were not so high on severe weather in our area that evening. Mm-hmm. But again, trust. All I had to say was 2014. You remember what happened then? Yes. Okay. Now, that didn't go as well because we did play an unimpeded game. That was the game we talked about earlier where, we had the students already, let in because we had some fire code issues that we had to let them into the seating area to get them out of the tailgate areas. We've since fixed that, but those are the things that happen. But everybody else that we had in the stadium at the time was evacuated. Everybody was safe. We got everybody out of the tailgate tents, so when they all blew over, it was not an issue. We got the game started, played uninterrupted. Ohio State kicked the crap out of OU that night, unfortunately. But at the same time, having to tell people who are used to working on a schedule, have every moment scripted. A D1 Power 5 head football coach, for example. And then you have to talk to two of them and tell them that you're about to upside down their world. And what they thought was going to happen isn't going to happen. Those are horrifically, and on more than one occasion, I have been told by somebody in power, you better be right. Okay. Because again, they view it in right, wrong. Mm-hmm. They view it as I'm right or wrong. I don't ever view it that way. You can't, because if you do it, you'll drive yourself crazy, right? If you're constantly worried that you've busted a forecast, then don't do this, right? You've got to be in something else. Do something else. Don't be an event forecaster. But those were the two I think that were at the top of my list for hardest. They both worked out well. Thankfully, that generated a large amount of trust, and that relationship has just been great from that point forward.
Yeah, I always love kind of hearing that the good kind of outcome, whether the event ended up being good or not. Like the gosh, I'm trying to formulate my words here. The overall like trust building that it comes with when you nail it, or even if it's not nailed, right? And you're like, okay, well, here's how we improve. Like all those small steps to building like trust with the institution are really just kind of encouraging, because right. I hope that a thing like a Red Rocks doesn't happen again, because each time something happen, or each time something goes wrong, it's a learning moment, and hopefully some people will learn from that, and we can kind of get a little bit better on that end.
Right. And I'll take one thing that you said and kind of flip it a little bit too. Just like you can say, this is not right, wrong means both ways, right? Yes, we say we busted. Yes, we say we nailed it, but that's not what's happening here, right? Mm-hmm. We're not nailing it. We are using our expertise to try and anticipate what the invisible atmosphere is going to throw our way, and how hazardous is that going to be to whatever population you have. and how can you get them into a safe spot as quickly as you can before all of those ingredients come together to be harmful. And it's Red Rocks is going to happen again, right? I mean, these things are going to happen. They just will. But the better you can think about things ahead of time, the better you can plan ahead of time. Again, like I said, for us in the College World Series and Red Rocks both, what do we do for rideshare folks? If the plan is to send people to your car, what if they don't have a car, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to address that somehow, some way. You can't just leave that as an open spot in your plan. And so the more of those holes that get filled, the less likely people will get hurt. And that's really what we're after. That's the overall goal.
Well, hey, I know you're almost out of time. Is there anything you want to add closing or?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. It's great to see you guys again. And again, the kind words about the class, I do appreciate that greatly. And, constantly trying to morph that class to be timely. I can already tell you, we've kind of morphed now into a set of reading materials that talk about this dilemma of right versus wrong. And, the fact that you're just making a bet, right? That's all it is. We can talk about casinos and sports gambling a different time. But really kind of that's what you're doing, right? You're seeing how the odds are stacked, and then you're making decisions accordingly, right? Do I put the money down on OU against, Arkansas State, but with the 32-point spread? Or do I pull that lever on the casino slot machine one more time? Or do I put it on red or black at roulette? Those are all decisions that you're making where you're trying to take a risk versus a cost loss, right? What's the cost? What's the loss of those decisions? And if you're not thinking about weather decisions in the same way, you're off base, because that's all they are, right? They are bets against a set of information where you're never going to know the answer ahead of time. You will not know the answer ahead of time. So you have to make the best decision you can and roll with it. And that's pretty much, what we deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes,
we're definitely going to have to get you on again, because we didn't even scratch the surface. We didn't get to Hugo Bowl. We didn't
absolutely.
Yeah. So we're going to have to do this again. But thank you so much.
Absolutely. Be happy to.
And if y'all want to follow him on Twitter, we're going to have his Twitter link in the description of this when we get it uploaded. Dr. Kloesel, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yes, appreciate the opportunity. You guys stay safe.
All right, you too. See ya. Go ahead and switch this there. All right. That was a great.
What a fantastic episode. Fantastic.
I love Dr. K. He's cool.
I already have a great tweet idea for
okay.
the moment this stream ends that I'm going to tweet out on our official account. So if you're watching this from that tweet, hi. Literally going to say, OU fans, without Dr. Kloesel and OU emergency prep, Samaje Perine never breaks the rushing record. Find out how here.
I mean, that's true.
There's a
very solid case for that.
Massive moment in OU history that just might have never happened if they played the game 90 minutes earlier.
Yeah, that's insane. We did get a couple chats. They're all from my friend Junior. He said, definitely don't regulate speed when it rains. I do a little sort of do.
I do the speed limit instead of 5 over.
That's almost exactly what I do. Yeah, I typically drive 5 over just regardless, but I'll usually pull it back a bit if it's raining. I've actually been driving my dad's truck recently because my car. It's a long story, but I haven't had my car for a while, so I've been borrowing my dad's truck. And when we had some pretty decent rain, some puddles out, I might have did some puddle splashing just a bit. It was fun. I'm gonna ignore those other 2 comments, and I should maybe there we go. Let's do that. Get wrecked. Junior thinks it's funny. It's not. But no, we're coming to a point now, I think, where to kind of, I guess, put a cap on the emergency management discussion. We're coming to a point now. I think people are starting to get a bit more weather-wise as far as, oh, okay, maybe I should actually like listen to what people are saying.
Yeah, and I think there's an upside and a downside to that, because I think in some places people are maybe overconfident because they think, because they've grown up with it and they've learned so much secondhand now, that they're essentially on par with those people.
Yeah.
Oh, he don't know, this new meteorologist they hired 2 days ago, he don't
Yeah.
know what he's talking about.
That is a problem. Like you mentioned, armchair meteorologists, right? Like they're so prominent on Twitter. I hate Twitter.
Oh my god.
But there's always like
There's something once a week that just makes me want to strangle people through a screen.
Twitter's rough, especially
recently. For those who don't know, there was a violent tornado that went through the town of Matador, Texas.
Oh, I think I heard of that.
And
I'm kidding. That's in my DMA. I was very involved with that. That was a very tough evening.
Let's just say that it didn't exactly get the preliminary rating that the people who chased it thought it should have. And I hate this to no end, because there are people who go out specifically to survey and look at the site and make sure the building quality, and even in the notes, they said the building quality of a lot of buildings that hit was not that great. Yeah. Therefore, that puts a cap on what the rating could possibly be.
Well,
and also, we need to stop with this idea. I've mentioned this before. I know I have. Stop with the idea that the Fujita scale is an intensity scale. It's not. It's an impact scale.
It's a damage scale. Yeah. Well, we can get into Matador, all right? Because, like I said, that's our DMA. That's our viewing area. We were doing coverage that night, and it's like we were watching like the like video and images and stuff roll in from the aftermath.
Violent tornado.
Very, very bad situation. And
you know, just to throw it in real quick, I saw some very, very bad chase habits from that showed up on my Twitter page from people who were like 300 yards from this thing, and it's rain wrapped and it's right in front of them. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You're gonna get yourself killed one day.
The thing about the rating is, and this has to be like, we're on what, our 11th episode? This has to be like the 9th time we've brought up EF ratings, but
I know we rail on it. We rail on it, but I will still scream from the rooftops, El Reno was EF5.
So, well, and I guess we can get into that, right? Like you said, the armchair meteorologists who are like, oh no, that should have been rated whatever. Those people who go out and do the survey are trained specifically for damage impact and rating it like that. And so when you it's one thing to say like, oh, I don't know, that should have been rated higher or whatever. And you know, we could probably have an El Reno discussion too. I'm not so sure anymore, because seeing I know.
Of course, it's the Fujita scale is an impact scale.
Yeah,
it's what it is. And so, as much as I want to say like it's an EF5, like if you look at it, you look at the El Reno tornado, that is the pinnacle of what every violent tornado like. That is it. But it didn't hit anything. Therefore, you can't.
I think
by the letter of the law.
Yeah. I think the argument, instead of El Reno should have been an EF5, what I think it is, what the argument should be reframed towards is we need a intensity scale.
Yes.
We need both. We need two. We need damage and intensity. I think that, like, and again, how are you going to do intensity? You can't do it on radar wind estimations because those are not.
Someone made a tweet
most of the time.
That I almost somewhat agree with this. The EF scale, like what a tornado is rated, keep that behind closed doors. Don't put it out to the public. And I don't know if I hate that.
I don't know, actually. I got to think that over, because well, dipping back into what we are talking about with Dr. K, there is a psychology aspect, or like a reaction aspect that you have to keep in mind. And I think one of the benefits of those tornado scales, same
True.
with like hurricane scale, right, is getting across the idea of danger. But the problem with that is that's all done after the fact, right? So I don't know. I'd have to think that over.
It's tough. I mean, with tornadoes, it's such a fine scale thing. You're
Yeah.
never going to get it fully right,
No,
ever.
it's
I mean, I don't
it's
think there.
impossible
I don't. You'd
at
almost
the
have.
moment.
You'd have to have some way to measure surface wind at every single point, and that's just not possible.
You'd need like a mesonet everywhere.
Yeah.
Like that's just
Or
it's
you
so
just,
impractical.
or maybe when drones become less expensive, we just fly drones into every single tornado.
Yeah, then we got to get FA. What was
Yeah.
it? FAA.
FAA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to
There's
think.
no right answer.
I mix up my 3-letter organizations, especially the ones that begin with F. But
There's
not
no right
not the
answer.
ATF. I can't forget them. I don't like the ATF.
But you know what? I don't like the IRS, so
We could do a whole episode on 3-letter organizations we want to get
we
rid of.
dislike.
But maybe let's not. We'll save that for an episode of based reflectivity, if we ever do that. No, the thing with the Matador tornado. So, I will like I know because I was in the NWS chat that day and the day following. They were very, very, very thorough. They were very painstakingly going over each thing.
I mean, they brought out Tim Marshall, who's done this thousands of times.
And they took it to the Wind Institute at Tech to have
That's
them
the big,
look
yeah.
at it. Like, they were very, very thorough. I have no doubt in my mind that was the correct rating. That being said, I think there does need to be a new rating or a new set of maybe 2 ratings in the future. I would like an intensity rating. I don't know how on earth we're going to do it. And the drones thing doesn't work either, right?
No, I mean, it's tough. It really is.
Because you can't have a drone on site. Just
no, and
That's
you're
tough.
never gonna.
we
You
may
almost
never
have to
never
say-
get an intensity rating.
No, I don't think it's necessarily possible.
I know we kind of port over intensity based on damage, but that is already getting to the point where like we're making like you always say, we're making houses better. So that doesn't necessarily something that appears to be EF2 damage could have had EF3 wind speeds, but it's just a
Exactly.
better built house. Like,
and you know what? It's
maybe we need a
it would be
EEF
less
scale,
of
an enhanced Fujita scale.
I would be fine with it. All right, if we just everybody stopped using it as an intensity scale. Like personally, I know you're always gonna want to say like, oh, this tornado probably had this set of winds and whatnot. I mean, you almost have to take that out and just look at damage. Like you almost just have to take it out because at that point you're convoluting what the scale actually is, and I think we're straying. I don't know. Maybe these conversations were happening when we were younger, but I can't remember this conversation happening nearly as much, like 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. And maybe that's why they went to the enhanced Fujita scale in 2007, 8, whenever it was.
That's a good question. I'm not actually sure why we switched. Was it kind of the same thing? Like we started building buildings better, so they needed
I think
to,
so.
Okay.
I
imagine that's what it was, but I guess I've never looked into it. Yeah, I don't know. And the thing is, it's about it being like kind of a port for intensity. Like Fujita, when he was studying, like I have a whole thing coming up. I swear I'm working on it. I'm working on a video for the channel that's kind of along these lines. But like when Fujita was starting, he started with the nuclear bombs at Hiroshima and like surveying the damage from that and trying to estimate wind speeds based on that. And then that got carried over to tornadoes when he started working with University of Chicago. And so it's like we can get an idea of a tornado's intensity based on its damage, as long as we continually update it to, I guess, to incorporate like new building techniques, and it's not going to be the same every time.
Yeah,
But
it's tough.
it can be.
Yeah,
It was designed
maybe we
somewhat as an
update it again.
intensity.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe we update it again and it gets back to that. The issue that we're running into, I think, in today's day and age is there's just so much variation in building quality across even just one town.
Tough. It's really tough. Well, and an EF5 that goes through a cornfield, you have no idea.
El Reno, like it didn't hit anything.
Exactly.
Therefore, the only stuff that got hit didn't get hit by the core of the tornado. Therefore, can only rate it EF3 at that point.
Yeah, that's tough. Maybe we should try and get a one of the survey team folks on to maybe kind of hash this out a bit, because like, man, I know that there's places to improve just as far as the scale goes, but I have no idea how we would do it. Like that's so weird. That's such an odd concept. Like, it should be better, but it isn't, and it can't be at the moment. It would take maybe one day.
I'm not sure what the process was to upgrade from Vegeta to enhanced shit. I can't remember off the top of my head. It would take multiple years of working in laboratory environments at the Wind Institute, and maybe NSSL and whatnot, and you'd have to do years and years and years of testing to try to come up with a range that by the time you do that, it might be outdated already. I mean, it's...
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I will always have a soft spot for the Vegeta scale or enhanced Vegeta scale, either one. I just... These kinds of debates continually happen every single time we have...
I know. Any violent tornado that goes through a town.
Yeah. It's always the same discussion. So I'd like to see something change along those lines, maybe. But hey, it's like Dr. K said, right? You know, you have to have a thick skin if you're going to be in this field. I'm sure everyone in that survey team knows like that their rating is going to be questioned till the end of time. Like that's Absolutely. I'm sure that's something that's baked into the cake with them, and they understand. So,
and I'm gonna be honest, like you look at past EF5, F5 events, I mean, you could argue that, I mean, really, other than El Reno, probably haven't had one since then. I mean, if you look at the damage, right? You consider what EF5 damage looks like. Have we seen that? I mean, I know Rolling Forks, EF4, that's probably the next closest. That one's one, that might be the only one that I look at and I say, that or Mayfield. That and Mayfield are probably the only two that I say, you know what? That could go either way.
Yeah. What was the last EF5 we've had? Let's just
was it more? It was more. It was more.
More is the last one? We haven't had one since more?
No.
Wow.
It's been more.
Wow. Yeah, so that's an excellent question, right? If you took more in this hypothetical situation, right? And obviously we don't want to make light of it because it wasn't a fatal tornado, but if you were to take more and like port it over to today with newer structures, better architecture, would it still be EF5?
Not even that. If you move it to where the El Reno tornado ended up being, is it an EF5? No, it's not.
Well, I just mean based purely on like.
Well, yeah,
even still an
if you
EF5?
if you put it through the exact same area it went through today, like if those
it
those
may not be.
Well, I don't know. Those of you who drive through more, right? You look at the buildings that are there now. They look relatively well constructed because they had to be because they were hit by a tornado before. I think it is. I think it gets rated. I think it gets rated EF5 again.
Okay. See, I'm just throwing this out there because, like, I don't know, like the way building technologies have enhanced so much in the last few years
Because
alone.
look,
Like we
it
could,
only takes one EF5 damage point to make the tornado EF5. The common misconception with tornadoes is, oh, there's a huge swath of this
yeah,
EF5 damage.
yeah,
And oftentimes that can be the case, but if you look at the more tornado damage track, there's only a few small select areas that actually got EF5 damage, and usually it's when a tornado tends to stall out a little bit over the area. So hence why it's not really an intensity scale, it's an impact scale, because if the tornado passed over normally with the same winds, it's probably EF3, EF4 damage. But
well,
it
and by
sat there
that
for a little bit.
logic, man, there could be tons of undocumented EF5s
Oh,
that
sure.
just happened out in the open, and there's not the physical evidence for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why it's such a crazy thing to try and wrap your brain
That's why
around.
something like ground scoring is such a good indicator of EF5. And in every tornado I see now, someone says, ground scoring, there's ground scoring. No, it's not ground scoring. Stop.
Yeah,
It's
I saw
not.
the ground scoring comment.
It's
That one made me
not
mad
ground
too.
scoring. It's corn that got knocked down into a path. That's not ground scoring.
Ground scoring is when you have a foot deep trench
Yeah.
where the dirt literally got sucked up. That's
When you have pieces of asphalt that have been ripped out of the ground, then talk to me.
yeah. When when the pavement is peeled back like a banana peel.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. Well, I think we're probably okay to wrap it up here. We did have another comment from my friend Junior. He said, "This is so entertaining. Love the guests." I did too. We are gonna have to get Dr. K
Dr.
on
K is
again.
great.
Like I said, we didn't even scratch the surface. Like
Oh, absolutely. There's
that
so much
was.
more there.
I'll say this now that he's not here. I'm not as embarrassed. His class was like the most entertaining like well compacted class. Like I don't know if I'm putting it the right way, but like really 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 dense classes
Yeah,
are usually not fun.
Yeah.
They're usually not fun at all because you're covering a ton of material and you're likely doing a bunch of tests and stuff. Really really condensed classes, not fun. His class was really, really fun, and we covered so much. We covered, like, this huge range of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. It was great.
And I never felt overwhelmed or bored. I loved that class so much.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So, yeah, we're going to definitely get him on again. But actually, we got somebody else for next week. Or that's the plan for now. Actually, we'll reach back out with
see about that. What to see about that. Next week might be a little tricky.
Oh, you're going to be busy.
Got my last 2 days of work, I think next Sunday and Monday. And then 2 days after that, we're heading to California.
Ew, why would you want to go there?
So, Tyler had to go get married.
Oh, that's sweet.
So yeah, so it might need to be pushed back maybe a week or two, but we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
Point being, we got somebody we're working with to get
on.
It's going to be a ball.
Excited.
It's going to be
super excited.
So yeah, I think that's probably good for now. We, as always, need to go ahead and shout out the social medias because, like we say pretty much every time, our upload schedule is so incredibly inconsistent.
So what happens when you got lives, unfortunately?
When you're trying to meteorology in general, it's like trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle on like a floating thing in like a wave pool.
Oh yeah,
it's trying to make a schedule for your own life is just insane, and then trying to get that between two people is like twice as hard, and then trying to get that with two people plus a guest is it's crazy.
Impossible.
Well, it's not impossible, but it's
very tough.
It's very tough. So yeah, we will probably never have a consistent upload schedule, at least until I don't know, the weather starts asking us,
calming down.
Hey, can I thunderstorm today, or are you busy? Oh, okay, no, it's fine. I can wait next week. So until that day happens, we will never have a consistent upload schedule. So social medias are important. That's how you will find out when we are going to be going live.
And even if we're not uploading in a week, come chat with us.
Yeah.
You got questions or stuff?
Yeah.
We'll answer. We're not
Maybe.
just a podcast.
Depends on the question.
True. We like to have fun outside. If you want to have some Twitter banter,
send us
we're all
memes
for
or
it.
something, man.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Start a fight in the comments.
Yeah. No, don't do that. But no, yeah, we got lots of cool stuff coming up. I swear I'm working on extra content. It's slow going. But it will come out one day. I may be 50 years old, but it will happen one day.
So is this an Avatar 2 situation?
I wouldn't say it's Avatar 2. I would say it's Return of the King.
Fair enough.
Right? Like I'm making progress. It's just going to take like 5 years. It's going to take forever. But yeah, that's it for us today. We will see you all sometime.
We'll let you know. Go follow us. Follow us.
See y'all.
See y'all.